All right, everyone, welcome back to the We Shall Not Sleep podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Happy Camel Day. It's Wednesday for a lot of us here, the working class here in the West, halfway through the week. Shorter week for us Americans, though, as a lot of us had a Memorial Day off, so tomorrow being Friday Eve, a lot of things to look forward to, shorter working week. The weather here, especially in the Midwest, has been rather odd. It's been a lot colder than what we have previously experienced, so that's some niceness. I mean, we got the rest of the summer for it to be hot. I'm particularly a fan of much cooler weather, but I digress. I want to talk about something. I got done talking about Israel last week, and I kind of want to talk about Israel's history, to be honest with you, this week. I want to recap something because what I want to cover is a story that's covered in both in 2 Chronicles 36, the book of Haggai. We can go and pick up, Ezra chapter 3, as well, Zechariah 4, and the entire book of Ezra for that matter. But it's the rebuilding of the temple, Solomon's temple, in Jerusalem. So if I can do the biggest recap of the Old Testament you'll ever hear, okay? You ready for this? It'll be very, very simple. You have creation, you have the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, they sin, there's the fall, there's the ultimate redemption. You know, the lamb is given at that time, is already prepared. We're not an accident. We're not a plan B. And Adam and Eve are given the command to multiply, and they do so. But then the evil reaches heaven, and he decides to flood it. You get the whole Noah story. Then eventually you get the covenant with Abraham. And then you get David in the line of kings, all the kings that were to go after him. The kingdom is split after Solomon, after David's son Solomon rules, into Judah and Israel. And then you have the line of kings with Judah and Israel that descend from David, and they're all basically, hey, and guess what he did? Evil on the side of the Lord. And, oh, hey, look, surprise, he did evil on the side of the Lord again. And, oh, hey, man, look at this guy did some good stuff. Oh, wait a minute. He had kids, and the kids did evil in the sight of the Lord. It's just this vicious cycle. Well, eventually, you get to a point where God just allows them to experience the consequences of their own sin, and there's the Babylonian exile. Well, that's where we kind of pick up. And we pick up the story with Cyrus the Great, who releases the Jews back to Jerusalem. He sends them back. You know, they've been in exile for a long time, so they can go back. And Ezra, along with the appointed governor, Zerubbabel, begin to rebuild the once magnificent temple that Solomon had built. It was in ruin, and it needed to be replaced in totality because of the amount of destruction and everything that had been done to it. Well, this journey is chronicled in those passages that I had mentioned. The fall of Jerusalem is in 2 Chronicles 36. The prophet Haggai and Zechariah, Zechariah with the E, they actually overlap in their prophecies and in their encouragement of Zerubbabel during the time of this rebuilding, which really had a lot of obstacles, not just the time and the money, but like several years that it took to actually rebuild the temple because of delays and changeover in leadership. You know, stuff that we deal with today. You know, whether it's in a presidential election or if it's just like a changeover in leadership at a company, certain projects get delayed, other projects get renewed. That's just the way things go from time to time. So they eventually are getting to a point where they are slowly working on it, and I want to take us to the message that the prophet Zechariah gives. He's given this message, and he's commanded to give this to Zerubbabel by God. And it's in Zechariah chapter 4, verses 6 through 10. He said, "So he said to me, this is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. What are you, mighty mountain? Before Zerubbabel you will become level ground. And then he will bring out the capstone to shouts of God bless it, God bless it. Then the word of the Lord came to me. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this temple. His hands will also complete it. Then you will know that the Lord Almighty has sent me to you. Who dares despise the day of small things? Since the 7 years of the Lord that reigns throughout the earth will rejoice when they see the chosen capstone in the hand of Zerubbabel." So it's basically a rhetorical question. Basically, you know, God is with you, and he was being discouraged, and there's a lot of things going on. And so how many of us we have a goal, And there are so many things, the small things that just get in our way, the distractions, all of these things in life where we have a task, we know that it's a holy thing, we know what we should be doing, whether it's, getting ourselves back in shape, or maybe eating the right food, or maybe it's working on a project for a loved one, for Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthday, Christmas, Valentine's Day, or it's an overall goal personally in your life, financially, or maybe it's a goal you need to reach because there's a reward at your job. There's several things in life that we have, personal objectives, projects, missions that we all have on behalf of others, maybe on behalf of ourselves, where we have an order of things. We've made a plan. We're doing it. We're in the midst of day whatever, day such and such of the new me or whatever. And there are things that will absolutely get in our way. Right? They will, things that just the daily, maybe the mundane, maybe it's just like it's hard, maybe on a random Thursday, just to want to do good again, maybe to do well, or to get that workout in, or do whatever. And it's several things that happen. For me, it's always the small things that upset me more because they're like the things that I can control. The big things I really can't control in life, I don't usually get very upset over the big things that happen. It's usually a bunch of small things that get after me, because a lot of times the small things are self-inflicted, whether it's, stubbing your toe, or slipping and falling, or forgetting something at the grocery store, whatever. It's like all those small things are like, gosh, out of my own laziness or neglect or forgetfulness, I, unintentionally inconvenience myself or cause harm, unintentionally. And those are the things that make me upset the most. But when you're going through it, sometimes there's patterns of life, seasons of life, where you're just going through it. Like you just can't catch a break, or there's adversity, or there's temptation. And so Zerubbabel's going through this during this time of rebuilding, and this time of trying to do a good work that he's been called to. God's been arranged. God works through Cyrus the Great and says, you can now return finally after being exiled, after being persecuted, because your sin, the sins of your ancestors, the result and the consequences of that is that you will be carried away by your enemies. And now that time, the mercy is now returning to the land, and now there's this opportunity for you to rebuild the temple. And eventually things come in his way that are be like, oh man, I thought I had the ability to do this. There's a changeover in leadership, and then suddenly there's a decree that says you can't do this anymore. And then there's this, look, got to find the paperwork. You got to find the original decree. And it's like, wait a minute, like what? Like what do you mean we have to stop this project and stop for so long? And the word of the Lord comes to a prophet, Zechariah, and the message given to him is saying, who dares despise the day of small things? And it's a message to all of us saying, embrace the day of small things. Do not waste it. When God's given you a task, and maybe it's a long-term things, but you have these smaller things that get in your way, or these smaller tasks that God's appointed you for, do not despise it. Embrace it. It's like, don't sweat the small stuff, essentially is the phrase. Embrace it. It's a gift. So for me, for a lot of times, right? A lot of times I have talked about my willingness to do the Lord's work, but it's also rough. It can be difficult at times. And part of that was like me, really lamenting at the fact that I thought I found love at one time in my life, and that wasn't the case. So I've been single for several years, and I've had some relationships, but not as serious as the one I had when I was in college. And for me, I've always thought to myself, like, well, I guess it's just preparing me, right? Preparing me for something. And that might be the case, but I'm thinking of it right now that being single at this moment in life is a blessing. And I'm looking at all these other things as obstacles, like, oh, I really would love to have kids. I'd love to have a family. And there's a lot of comparisons out there. Social media can be bad. And it's like, wait a minute. What if it's a blessing for right now that the best thing in my life is that I do not have a relationship? And I've thought that many times, but it's really hit me in this last week. And because I'm fretting over the smaller things, but it's like those smaller things, the reason why I can tackle them is because God's given me the freedom to do so right now. I'm like, don't sweat the small things. Embrace it. Accept the challenge. I'm like, okay, we can do that. So that is something that I wanted to bring to you tonight. Hopefully, don't sweat the small stuff. Something that one of our own people, God's own people, God had to remind him of that. Do not despise it, but embrace it. Hopefully, some good food for thought for you guys. Thank you for tuning in tonight. May God bless you. May God keep you.